it wasn't too long ago that we had a U.S. intel report come out that was published, I believe, it was with the Washington Post, saying that U.S. intelligence suggests that Ukraine is going to fall short of capturing Mariupol. It's going to fall short of capturing the objectives that the United States had set out with the Ukrainians to achieve with this counteroffensive. Now, that doesn't mean all its objectives. In fact, the report even said at the end that it could still achieve its objectives, that it could still see a breakthrough. And after, Kharkiv and Kherson, we know that the situation can change pretty rapidly on the ground. Definitely when it comes to a situation where soldiers are pushed too far, and the Russians have a tendency to do that, and then the line can snap. But the report said that it was likely to fall short of expectations. Now, about a week later, after that report was published, and we covered it on the channel, we're starting to see some progress from the Ukrainian side and some new dialogue from DC and from American generals, particularly Mark Milley. Now, Mark Milley is an interesting case when it comes to analyzing this war, because I would say that Mark Milley, when it comes to the people who are pro-Ukraine and from the pro-Ukraine alliance, are probably one of the more reserved commanders. He's somebody who's very quick not to be like, oh my God, this is the breakthrough, we're going to get victory, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, Crimea is going to be liberated. He's in fact been very skeptical of the idea of liberating Crimea. That doesn't mean he completely disregards it. He's just somebody who's like, look, this is going to be an extremely difficult task. You're fighting a very large military force that's been over there for 8 years. So I would say he has a perspective that is more reserved compared to many of the other pro-Ukraine commentators that we see in the space, right? And so I really like listening to his commentary to keep myself grounded to people with military expertise. Now, he's not the only person I listen to. He's just one, because of course he's an American government official, and I've got all my military advice or commentary on how the war is going from American government officials. Then I would maybe be the CIA agents that many of my critics accuse me of, truly the grandson of the CIA director. But recently he released a statement about the ongoing counteroffensive, saying that actually the Ukrainians have largely broken through the first line of defense. Now, let me be clear, that would be a major achievement, because the first line of defense, there's 3 lines of defense, and each line of defense that the Russians have made in Zaporizhia, made up of anti-tank ditches, dragon's teeth, anti-tank structures, machine gun embankments, of course, bunkers and mortars, artillery, and dug-in trenches, tons of anti-personnel mines, tons of anti-tank mines. They have drones are constantly flying in the air. The sky is flooded with drones. They've got helicopters and the Air Force supporting from a distance. They've really set up the area for a defense. But each line is less, I would say, bulky than the last, with the first line being the one bulked up the most, because the Russians knew that without a doubt the Ukrainians would probably hit the first line, so they need to concentrate on building that up. But now, if you've broken through the first line, that means that the structures and the defensive positions that you find after that might not be as strong, according to many analysts. So this could be a very significant development. And he's not only saying that they've captured, Robotny, which is the village everybody's talking about, making it the 9th settlement that they've liberated during this counteroffensive in the south, and one that has a decent high embankment. It's on a higher position, on not like a hilltop, but it gives them a good view of the surrounding area, really good position for artillery, mortars, stuff like that. But they're pushing further, and they're gathering about 500 meters a day, advancing 500 meters a day, sometimes even a kilometer a day. So the Ukrainian offensive is moving forward. It's crawling forward, but it is moving forward. Let's read what the general has to say. I think somebody donated. Who donated? Bunny, thank you so much for the tier 1 and being sub for 16 months. It's crazy how the Russians can't keep up with our severely outdated tech. Well, I gotta say, this is pretty good technology, pretty good anti-drone tech right here. I'm just saying, Now, it's kind of hard to compete with. Throughout their counteroffensive, Ukrainian troops have managed to attack through Russia's first main defensive belt in some areas along the front line. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said in an interview with Al Maklakla TV, a Jordanian public broadcaster, published on August 25th. The Jordanians got the scoop? The Jordanians got the scoop. Good stuff for Jordan. Specifically, on the axis of advance that Ukrainian forces are attacking right now, Ukrainian forces have attacked through the main defense belt. The chairman noted that Russian troops have been preparing a deep line of defense for many months, and it has minefields, dragon's teeth, and tank ditches. It's a very complex set of defensive preparations that the Ukrainians are fighting through. CNN also reported on August 25th, citing Ukraine's general staff, that there are signs Ukrainian troops have broken through Russian defenses along the southern front line in the Zaporizhia Oblast. Actually, I want to show this CNN segment because after so many segments doomerine about the Ukrainians, it is strange to see a change of tone recently. I mean, it's not strange. It's not strange to see them change tone when the battle lines change. It's just surreal to see that change in how CNN and the mainstream media is talking about it recently. And I hope how they're talking about it here is how they talk about it moving forward. And I'll explain that in a moment because I think that they're giving a more holistic view here in the report that CNN released.
On the battlefield in Ukraine, there are signs of some progress in the country's counter-offensive against Russia. It appears Ukrainian forces have penetrated Russian defences along part of the southern front lines in the Zaporizhia region. Both sides reporting intense fighting around the village of Robotyne, which Ukraine says it secured earlier this week. It comes as Kyiv steps up its attacks on Russian-occupied Crimea. Meantime, the Pentagon says the U.S. will...
Okay, so that's all it really gets. It gets 30 seconds. They bring on an analyst a little bit later and they talk about it. But I wanted to read the article that they released with it, which I think is giving a much more in-depth, balanced review of the counteroffensive than a lot of what the mainstream media is saying, with it just like, oh, it's all downtrodden and it's all stuck in the mud and it's not making any progress. Because my main critique of how the mainstream media is talking about this isn't that it's saying the Ukrainians have yet to achieve their objectives, because they do still have yet to achieve their objectives. The counteroffensive is going slower than anticipated, but nobody talks about the increase in the destruction of Russian counter battery fire when we're getting reports of, for every one Ukrainian artillery gun that's destroyed, 3 Russian artillery guns are destroyed. We're not talking about the advancements that they are making.
Flemmy got a tier 2 subscription. Can you please explain this in Hearts of Iron 4 terms? You lost me there a bit.
Thank you so much for the tier 2 subscription. What's Hearts of Iron 4 terms? Your bunker, your bunkers that you've built up on your tile has gotten worn down, and some of them have even gotten captured. And the bunkers behind the ones you've captured are built up, but they're not as strong as the ones that have already been captured. And your divisions have lost some equipment. You know, they've lost a lot of their organization with their base stats. And so you're in a very difficult position as the Russians right now, and you might rush to try to reinforce these positions to stop a breakthrough, which could occur due to this break in the bunkers that you've put in the tile. There you go. I've explained it in Hearts of Iron terms. But my main critique when it comes to how the mainstream media has covered this is that it doesn't cover the victories. It doesn't cover the victories that are not captures of land, because most people are analyzing all of these battles just who controls what, and not how many armored vehicles were destroyed, how much ammunition was used, how many artillery guns were destroyed, how many divisions were left battered. None of this is being covered, even though this is the type of stuff that can set up battles in the future of the war going forward. Because let's say that they don't break through, but they leave the Russian army in the south in shambles. That still gives the Ukrainians openings down the line that he can take advantage of. That still is an achievement in and of itself, but that hasn't been covered fairly. Anyway, let's read a little bit of this article, which I think is starting to cover it a little bit more fairly. Signs are growing that Ukrainian forces have penetrated Russian defenses along the southern part of the lines in Zaporizhia. and are expanding a wedge towards the strategic town of Tokmak while stepping up attacks on Russian-occupied Crimea. The General Staff said Friday there have been further successes in 2 areas towards the village of Novokopivka, further east, and in the direction of another small settlement. We're just going to call it Och, okay? Just to be respectful. Earlier this week, the Ukrainians said that they had secured the village of Robotine. Fighting continues to the south of that village. The General Staff said units are consolidating their positions, inflicting artillery fire on identified enemy targets, and conducting counter-battery operations. Ukraine's highly anticipated counteroffensive has been underway for weeks, with fighting focused along the eastern and southern fronts. Kiev launched the campaign in the hopes of recapturing territory seized by Russia, but so far, any gains have been small and painfully fought for. So, this is not only, the U.S. generals saying that they're starting to make advances and there's real progress and a possibility of breakthrough, but you've got Ukrainian general staff saying the same thing as well. But there's one other thing that this article talks about that I'm really happy they talked about, and is in relation to what I'm saying about fair coverage of this counteroffensive. And they're talking about Russian Telegram channels. They're talking about what the Russians are saying. Because if you're going to analyze how the front line looks, you need to look at how the Russians are doing as well. You need to look at what the soldiers on the ground for the Russians are saying. And what they're saying is not positive for them. And I'm happy that they're giving it some coverage here on CNN. One of my main critiques of mainstream media is they don't spend enough time talking about what's covered in Russian media and talking about what the Russians on the ground on the pro-war Telegram channels are saying. One of the best known of these, War Gonzo, said the Ukrainians had gained a foothold in Robotine and are attacking Novokopivka and is under heavy shelling. Ukrainian forces have also launched a parallel attack in Verbovi area to the east amid heavy artillery fire in both directions. So if you want to know where that is, they're attacking this way towards this village, which would be on the way to Tokmak, which is the first major location that the Ukrainians really want to take. And they're attacking this way, which has the possibility of expanding the limited breakthrough that they've achieved so far and making it possibly a bigger breakthrough. So they're not just trying to move forward, they're also trying to widen the captures that they've gotten so far, the liberations that they've achieved so far, widen their limited breakthrough. A blogger called Rogozin at the Front, who is linked to Russia's 58th Combined Armed Army, said that there has been an accumulation of enemy armored vehicles. The enemy is gathering forces for a decisive blow. I've seen some of the posts and videos that the Russians have made on these Telegram channels. I don't know if they show it here. I don't think they show it in this article. And they show vehicles in the distance, Ukrainian vehicles, getting ready for a major armored assault. And if the rumors that we're hearing right now are to be believed, that assault could be currently underway. Definitely if you're listening to the Russian Telegram channels. Whether or not that assault's going to come with success or who's taking more casualties, of course, many Russian accounts are saying we've obliterated all of the, a lot of the government accounts are saying we've obliterated all of these armored vehicles. A lot of the other Telegram accounts are saying it's a lot more balanced, but we're going to have to wait until the fog of war clears. The enemy is gathering forces for a decisive blow. They need to reach Verbovi, then Tokmak, he wrote. We're holding out. Another blogger, Belosky Silvok, Belarusian enforcer, said, the biggest worry right now is Robotine. The boys are having it hard there. By the evening, the fighting was already going on in the south of the settlement where the enemy was. It is objectively beginning to feel that there is a lack of new blood at the front. Manpower shortages. It isn't the first time I've heard it. It isn't the first military blogger on the other side that I've heard it from. It's something that is a consistent theme amongst the blogger crowd. The Kadyrov detachments painted a similar picture, saying that the Kadyrov detachments are the Chechens. Kadyrov is the dictator of Chechnya, who is backed up by Putin. He's one of Putin's lackeys, and he has a detachment of what are usually referred to as like TikTok soldiers, and that's kind of a mocking insult towards the idea that they don't do really much fighting whatsoever, and they mostly just pose for the internet on TikTok. Kadyrov detachments painted a similar picture, saying, heavy fighting continues in the Robotny area. The bastards are rapidly advancing. Let me say that again. The bastards are rapidly advancing, covered by artillery strikes. Again, if you wear down the counter battery fire of the Russians, It's going to be easier for the Ukrainians not to rely on shoot and scoot tactics, sit in one place, and do continuous artillery fire, putting more shells down range. And this is on top of the fact that the Ukrainians have concentrated their counteroffensive in this area, meaning they have more artillery shells to concentrate in the specific part of Russian defensives. The blog said Ukraine was using aviation to cover advancing infantry and had brought more ammunition supplies into the area. Other sources report that Ukrainian forces are suffering heavy losses. Oh, what source are they going to cite? I'm interested. This was funny when I first read the article. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed that 110 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed in the latest fighting, and that Western armored supply to Ukraine had been destroyed. Wow, all of it. That's very convenient. Yevgeny Belitsky, the Russian-appointed governor of the occupied Zaporizhia, said Friday, at the cost of colossal losses yesterday to the Ukrainians, They were able to reach the first defensive line of the engineering barriers, but they moved mostly even without artillery support. As a consequence, the enemy's assault groups, which yesterday managed to reach the first defensive line, were completely destroyed overnight. We're hearing that from the occupation governor, right? So, there's a chance that it might be true. There's a fog of war right now. We don't really know. There has yet to be posted any footage of all these burnt out husks of vehicles proving that, the advance had stopped or they hadn't achieved anything. And, the Ukrainians have treated, there haven't been any evidence posted. It's just the occupation governor's word, who has more interest than anyone else in the area of having the Russians win, are saying that the Ukrainians got repelled. Just saying. As a consequence, the enemy's assault groups, which yesterday managed to reach the defensive line, were completely destroyed. Other Russian sources have made similar claims about substantial Ukrainian losses inflicted by Russian air power and artillery. If you're interested in how the Russian air power is having an impact, definitely when Ukrainians have shoulder-mounted munitions that can shoot down helicopters and planes, what the helicopters will do is they'll fly like 8 kilometers out, which is just barely out of the range of many of these shoulder-mounted munitions, stingers that could shoot down these helicopters, and they'll lob rockets from a distance. That isn't terribly accurate, but it keeps the helicopters safe. That doesn't mean no helicopters have been shot down. Some of them were. I believe a few actually were shot down last week. But it keeps the Russian helicopters safe and allows them to just get fired down on the front line. All the commanders... But Provi Olsten, another military blogger, reported that losses on both sides are not insignificant. All the commanders on both sides are now concerned only about Robotyn. Fighting continues every moment, they added. Another Russian blogger said this was a critical moment on the battlefield, adding that Russian forces need to hold their positions for at least another month and a half to try to make gains in another area of the front line and attempt to shift the battlefield situation. Okay, so there's not really much more. There's a little bit more here to read here. I just want to read this last thing. The head of the Zaporizhia military administration for the Ukrainians said there are almost no buildings left standing in Robotyn after a week of fighting in the area. All soldiers are slowly moving forward, but the mine barriers the Russians have set up are very large, and it takes time to get through them. In its latest assessment, the Washington, D.C.-based Institute for the Study of War, ISW, said Ukrainian forces advanced closer to the Russian second line of defense in Robotyn area, further widening their breach of Russian defensive lines in the area. ISW also said that Russia's lack of operational reserves will force the Russian command to conduct additional redeployments as Ukrainian counteroffensive operations continue to degrade defending Russian forces in several sectors of the front. Now, some people have said, and I've seen this on Twitter, that the Russians have no reserves and they've already committed them all, and so the Russians are at the brink of complete collapse. And if there's a breakthrough, maybe it even look like Kharkiv. That's not true. They do still have soldiers in reserves that they could commit to the fight. So do the Ukrainians, though. And that's why it's such a tense moment. And that's why everybody's paying so much attention right now. Because we don't know which way this is going to go. Even though the Ukrainians are advancing, according to Mark Milley, 500 meters to a kilometer a day. Certainly, the pace of the counteroffensive is picking up. They're capturing more land, even if it's still at a crawl. They're moving forward, and they're capturing important locations. They still have a long way to go before they catch Tokmak, and they still have a long way to go, certainly, before they catch Mariupol or cut off the land bridge and reach the Sea of Azov, which is the ultimate goal of this operation. So we're starting to see progress. Not only when it comes to the amount of degradation Russian forces have suffered in the south, but also when it comes to territorial captures. And we're starting to see the defensive lines start to break down. And we're not only seeing that from Ukrainian officials claiming that, because this was from Ukrainian military officials, this article. But like I said earlier, also American officials like Mark Milley, which are a lot more reserved. And this also comes after other reports, from example, from Zaluzhny, who is the head of Ukraine's army, the head of Ukraine's armed forces, the chief of staff. He's their big boy, their big general. He has told American officials in private meetings, this comes from a secondhand source at the Wall Street Journal, that the Ukrainians are on the brink of a major breakthrough while he was pushing back on American criticisms of them not using enough American-style combined arm tactics to punch through the Russian lines. He countered them by saying that the tactics that they were using now were saving Ukrainian lines, and they were still at the brink of a major breakthrough. So we've got Mark Milley saying that they've broken through the first line of defense, which is where the most of the major defensives are, or at least has been built up the most compared to the other defensive lines. It's still deep. It's deep defenses. They have more stuff to go through, but he is saying that they're advancing 500 kilometers to about 500 kilometers to a mile or two a day. That's what we're hearing from Mark Milley. We're hearing from the Ukrainians military. We're hearing from their staffers and their chiefs of staff that they are making substantial advances and that they might be on the brink of a breakthrough. And we're hearing from Zaluzhny that they might be on the brink of a breakthrough. Now, if you notice anything about all of these sources, is that they're generally aligned with the Ukrainians. And so if it was just this, I don't know if I would even be covering this segment, because while they have access to information that the general public doesn't have access to, and that's why there's probably not a lot of independent sources outside of think tanks like the ISW that are reinforcing these claims with a ton of evidence, because we just don't have soldiers on the front line of this battle reporting everything that's going on. If you look at Russian military bloggers, they are doomering. They are worried. They know that this battle has quite a lot of weight to it, and it could decide how the counteroffensive goes. And so that means that I have to cover it, because if we got Mark Milley, multiple Ukrainian generals and chiefs of staff, Zaluzhny, and the Russians all paying attention to this, pointing to this and saying, possible breakthrough? Oh my goodness, what's about to happen? Then we should be paying attention to it. The counteroffensive is certainly not over. Oh, also, I did want to read this one Russian source I thought was super interesting. This is super interesting too, because these are the guys that shelled me and the other aid workers in Kherson. And so I do take a little bit of I don't want to be a sick fuck here and say I'm taking joy at their suffering, because I'm not. But the world has a way of distributing justice. You know? There's a balance to things. You know, some people believe that what you put into the world is what you get out of it. But when I was in Kherson and I documented the shelling of aid workers and when we got shelled by the Russian army, it was the 205th, or units and drone units specifically attached to the 205th. And since I've left the area, give it a month or two, apparently the 205th is not being commanded very well. Apparently they're being commanded actually very poorly. They're being commanded actually quite horribly. So let's read this Telegram post, and then I want to tell you something about somebody that was captured that ties this even more directly to the story of the shelling of aid workers that I documented in Kherson. Also, Arlander, thank you so much for the $50. Love your work. Thank you very much. You could have given that $50 to anyone in the world, but you decided to drop in this Twitch stream and give it to me to support my freelance journalism in Ukraine, and I greatly appreciate it. You could have taken that $50. You could have gone to XQC stream, gave it to him, and then he could have spent it immediately on loot crates and said, "Yo, thank you, man." You could have had that, but instead you decided to give it to me, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Trust me, I will not gamble it away. I will use it solely for alcohol. And I'm kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke. But thank you for the $50. I appreciate it. Anyway, let me read the thing. Several Russian sources are highlighting, and this is for more translated, always, love more translated. Several Russian sources are highlighting a dangerous situation that is developing on the islands of the Dnieper River. So for those of you who don't know, let's pull up the map. On the Dnieper River, in the Kherson area, there are islands in between what divides the Ukrainians and the Russians. These are the islands. They're really like swamplands. These islands right here. And so they're not really solidly controlled by either side. And the flooding has only really made it worse. And so apparently the Russians have ordered, without artillery support, Russian soldiers to take up positions here, which the Ukrainians responded to by, well, obliterating the positions with their artillery. First messages emerged when Russian mercenary with the call sign 13th published on his channel an audio message attacking the commander of the 205th Brigade. This was followed up by 4 to 5 other channels confirming this information and also mentioning similar situations developing in a number of other units. Below is a chat log provided to a Russian military reporter by someone from the brigade. It is unclear which specific island they are talking about, but the area seems to be somewhere near Kherson. So actually quite close to where I was shelled. Fighters from one of the main recon companies of the 205th Brigade appealed to us to highlight the problem on the islands. Devils, specifically the brigade commander, and then they hide the name, so we don't have the exact name of the brigade commander, and the head of the recon battalion, name hidden again, are sending our boys without artillery support, drones, and are killing our boys in droves. Recon battalions received the tasks to reach the island. First, Deep Recon Company goes, they're 200 and 300. Then the second company goes, 200, 300 plus captured. Second Recon Company, no artillery support. We're losing a company in 2 days. Company Commander Asimov stood up for the guys, but was dismissed, and they also want to dismiss his deputies. Company Commander Osmanov stood up for the guys, saying that there are no UAVs, no artillery support. Lads are yelling from the island, requesting evacuation and fire support for cover. There's none. Our commanders were dismissed. Other information came through that they only want to dismiss Sergei Magvanov, MM, and Sergeant Koral, SS, for the same reason. Zero supplies. Our lads were dropping chocolate bars. Sorry. Our boys were dropping chocolate bars from drones to the boys so they could eat. Something strange is happening. The ho-hos, it's like a slur for Ukrainian, are easily coming in, fucking us up and leaving. Their mortars and artillery won't let us stick our noses out. Command's coming to keep moving. But the guys they are saying is a swamp. They are not listening. Asking the command of the Dnieper group and the general staff to pay attention to the situation, since very soon we might face this problem multiplied by 3 if the situation isn't changed.